Hi, this is Candace Benji Small. I'm one of the Core 201 instructors, and I'm going to be talking about the logical structure of arguments. If you have not yet read this section of the handbook, I strongly recommend you go back and read it and then watch this video. One thing you should get from the handbook is the importance of diagramming arguments. When you read or view an argument, be sure to identify the conclusion. What is it that the author or viewer or speaker is trying to get you to believe or do? And then, just as importantly, what are the premises? What are the reasons that the author or speaker gives you to believe the conclusion to be true? When you evaluate an argument, you should never do it based off just the conclusion. Instead, what you want to do is examine closely the premises and see if they support the conclusion and evaluate the argument based on that. Here's an example of an argument. I'm running for Radford City dog catcher. I've lived in Radford for many years and I'm very good at catching dogs. In fact, I caught 5 dogs just in the last week. Vote for me in the next election. So what do I want? I want you to vote for me in the election. That's the conclusion. And the reasons I give you is I'm running for the office, I've lived in Radford for many years, and I'm really good at catching dogs. Those are the premises. Here's a visual argument. In this one, what does the artist want us to believe? That college tuition costs too much. Why do we believe that? What is the premise? You can see the picture of the savings at the top. So not only is the student leaving home, but he's leaving home with all his parents' money. Therefore, college costs too much. Here are some textual arguments for us to look at. Since you are trying to control your blood sugar, you should stay away from white bread. White bread has a high glycemic index. In this case, our conclusion is you should stay away from white bread, and statements 1 and 3 are the reasons why. All handicap parking spaces are painted with blue lines. That spot has blue lines. Therefore, that spot is intended for handicap parking. In this case, statement 3 is the conclusion, and it is supported by 1 and 2. In fact, 1 and 2 lead us to understand that the spot is intended for handicap parking. Hopefully now you feel comfortable or getting more comfortable with identifying conclusions and premises, or at least knowing the difference between the two and the importance of them. What we'll talk about now are the types of arguments, deductive and inductive. Deductive reasoning is the first type that we're going to examine. And in deductive reasoning, there are 2 or more statements, premises, whose logical relationship should lead to an unquestionably correct conclusion. Here's an example from the law. Doing something violates the law. The defendant did something. Therefore, the defendant violated the law. You can see how in a deductive argument, the premises build to the conclusion. Here is an everyday example. You hear a whistling sound coming from under the hood of your car. A mechanic says when a hose has a leak, it makes a whistling sound. She replaces the hose, the whistling sound stops. In this example, the mechanic is using deductive reasoning. Hoses make a whistling sound. There's a whistling sound. Therefore, the hose is making the sound. And then she tested it out. She replaced the hose and the whistling sound stopped. So that was a good deductive argument. Deductive arguments can also have an elimination factor to it. Let's say that you are sharing a house with the cast of The Big Bang Theory, and you buy some ice cream, and you put it in the freezer, and the next morning you go down to have some ice cream, because you like it for breakfast, I guess, and half of it is gone. Who ate your ice cream? You know that nobody else entered the house overnight. You also know that Leonard is lactose intolerant and never eats ice cream. You know that Sheldon is very particular about his ice cream brands and will only eat a particular brand, and that is not the brand that you have, so there's no way that Sheldon ate it. You also know that Raj and Wallowitz are out of town. They're in Vegas for the weekend, so there is no way that they could have eaten the ice cream. Therefore, by process of elimination, it has to be Penny. There's no argument. Penny must have eaten your ice cream. When you're looking at a deductive argument and you identify that one of the premises is not true, then the conclusion falls apart. Here is on the faces of it a good deductive argument. Jen always votes for the Radford candidate for dog catcher. I am from Radford, therefore Jen will vote for me. I can totally depend on Jen. But what if Jen doesn't always vote for the Radford candidate? What if that first premise isn't true? Then I can't depend on Jen. Or statement number 2, I'm from Radford, but there's kind of a missing premise. What about the other candidate? What if the other candidate is from Radford too? Then I can't depend on Jen voting for me, right? That doesn't make sense. So with deductive arguments, you have to see if the premises are true and do they guarantee? Is there anything missing from that structure that would say maybe we can't say that the conclusion is guaranteed? The other type of argument is an inductive reasoning argument. How do we know things about the world around us? Inductive reasoning is based on your ability to recognize meaningful patterns and connections from either your past experiences or data samples from other people. For a strong inductive argument, the evidence will be true, and it provides strong support for the conclusion. Let's go back to the ice cream mystery. In this case, we're not going to use elimination. We're not going to kind of piece it out in our mind. Instead, we're going to use clues. First off, we know the ice cream is gone, so that's a good clue. And we know from past experience that Penny was just talking about how much she loves that brand of ice cream. And even more damning, she's eaten your ice cream before. So based off of this, there's a very good chance that Penny is the culprit. Now, is it guaranteed? No. We can't like lock Penny up and put her in ice cream jail. But we're predicting from past behavior that Penny probably did it. And there's a very good chance that she did. You may see inductive reasoning in real life too. You will. We use it all the time. For example, what is the argument in the answer to the question, what's the fastest way to get to Blacksburg from RU? Now, you may ask your cousin, and your cousin lives in Blacksburg, but never comes to RU. And they say, well, I think it probably would be Pepper's Ferry. And then you ask your roommate, and your roommate goes, oh, I go to Blacksburg all the time. 81 is by far the fastest. I go like at least once or twice a week. Well, who has the better argument? Probably your roommate, because they do it all the time. Do you need a winter coat when you live in Radford? You ask your RA, who was here last winter, and your RA says, well, it was really mild. I never used my winter coat. I don't think you really need it. Then you talk to Professor Kansas Benji Small, who's been here since 2001, who will tell you, yeah, last year was really mild, but a couple years ago we had snow every week. Every Thursday it snowed, and then it snowed again, and then it snowed again. It was ridiculous. And what I have found is that in the 16 years that I've lived here, is that every winter is different. Some are mild, but sometimes we get a lot of snow. So are you going to listen to your RA or to me? Hopefully to me, because I don't want you freezing if we have a hard winter. How much should you budget for textbooks each semester? As a high school senior, you probably didn't yet know how much you should budget. But as you go through your career here at Radford University, and each time you buy books, you'll get a much better sense of how much you should budget. Another thing to consider is correlation versus causation. We are pattern seekers, and we look to see when there are patterns. But one problem is that sometimes we see patterns when there aren't any. Just an example of this is, here's a picture of the old man of the mountain. And the mountain face kind of looks like a face, a human face. But that's because humans are geared to look for human faces. We're not going to say that aliens beamed down and carved this statue. Here's an example of the age of Miss America correlating with the murders by steam, hot vapors, and hot objects. This is what's known as a spurious correlation. The two go together amazingly well. However, I don't think we want to say that as the age of Miss America increases, so will murders by steam, hot vapors, and hot objects. And when you pay attention to the news around you, you're going to see a lot of people who make spurious correlations, who say, because this is happening, this thing also is happening. Be very careful of that when you're critiquing arguments. A couple of things not to be fooled by. One of them is that people will try to make an inductive argument sound deductive, as if there is a guarantee. This summer there was a popular video, Despacito, featuring Daddy Yankee, and the video was filmed in Puerto Rico. And the Daily Mail had a headline, Beach-bound Believers, Justin Bieber's hit song Despacito leads to a 45% hike in tourism for Puerto Rico. And then they lay out their premises, that Justin Bieber's song boasts lyrics about the island, The video is really popular and features Puerto Rican landmarks. And since the song debuted in April, tourist searches have increased more than 45%. So they have laid out like a really beautiful deductive argument. It's like all this guarantees that Justin Bieber's hit song leads to a 45% hike in tourism. But there's a lot wrong with this. One of them is that people aren't actually booking the travel. People looking at things on Google is very different from them actually booking hotel rooms. The other thing you need to be cautious about is not requiring guarantees for inductive arguments. Conspiracy theorists do this all the time. For example, they'll dismiss the preponderance of evidence because one small thing doesn't fit in with the argument. For example, the Sandy Hook shootings were done by a single shooter. There's a ton of evidence about this. But conspiracy theorists point to early witnesses who said they saw two shooters. And they'll say, well, no, those witnesses said they saw two. Therefore, you can't believe anything about the one shooter. So a few takeaways. 1, evaluate an argument based on the premises, not on how much you agree with the conclusion. 2, for inductive arguments, consider how strong the premises are. 3, for deductive arguments, consider whether the conclusion is guaranteed. And 4, beware the inductive argument masquerading as deductive. Sometimes people are so passionate in their inductive reasoning, they want to say that their conclusion is guaranteed, when in fact, you need to look at the premises and see if that is actually true.